The impossible heist, the Worldbreaker, vanished on a Tuesday. One moment, the Craven Empire's most devastating warship was patrolling the outer rim of the Nexus sector, and the next, it simply wasn't there anymore. No debris field, no distress signals, no trace of its quantum signature. 22 kilometers of pure military might, equipped with enough firepower to crack a moon in half, had disappeared without a single photon of evidence. Admiral Thexmar stood before the Craven High Command, his forearms crossed in a gesture of absolute bewilderment. The crystalline beings around him pulsed with colors of anxiety and rage. The Worldbreaker wasn't just a ship. It represented 3 centuries of technological advancement, the combined resources of 16 conquered systems, and the very symbol of Craven supremacy in the galaxy. Its loss was unthinkable. The investigation team scoured space for weeks. They checked every known pirate haven, every rebellious system, every spatial anomaly within 1,000 light-years. The quantum trackers that should have been impossible to disable showed nothing. The ship's AI core, hardwired to send constant updates to Craven Command, had gone silent. It was as if the universe had simply swallowed the vessel whole. Then, 2 months later, a small mining station in the Vega system reported something unusual. A massive ship had appeared near their asteroid field. But instead of the expected terror that came with seeing Craven military colors, the miners reported confusion. The ship was broadcasting medical frequencies. It was requesting supply manifests for food and water. Most bizarrely, it was playing something the humans called classical music on all channels. Admiral Thexmar arrived with a fleet of 40 warships, ready for the battle of his career. What he found defied every military protocol he had studied in his 200 years of service. The Worldbreaker was there certainly, but it looked wrong. The gun ports had been sealed and converted into viewing windows. The hull, once painted in the terrifying black and red of the Craven Empire, now gleamed white with blue stripes. Across its side, in letters large enough to be seen from space stations, someone had painted Hope's Horizon. The Admiral's communication officer hesitated before opening the channel. When he did, a human face appeared on the screen. She was middle-aged, with graying hair tied back in a practical bun, wearing what looked like a converted Craven uniform, with the military insignia replaced by a medical cross. "Good morning, Admiral Thexmar," the human said with a warm smile. "I'm Captain Maria Chen of the humanitarian vessel Hope's Horizon."
"How can we help you today?"
The bridge fell silent. The tactical officer's scales shifted to a confused purple. The weapons specialist's tendrils drooped. Thexmar himself needed 3 attempts before he could form words. You stole the Worldbreaker. You stole our supreme warship. Return it immediately or face the consequences of your actions." Captain Chen's expression didn't change. She maintained that infuriating human smile that Thexmar had learned to distrust over his years of dealing with the species. "Stole is such a harsh word, Admiral. We prefer repurposed. Your crew abandoned it during that rather nasty plasma storm near Sol system. According to Galactic Salvage Law, Article 15, subsection C, any vessel abandoned for more than 30 standard days becomes salvage. We filed the paperwork properly. Abandoned? My crew would never abandon the Worldbreaker." Well, they did seem to leave in quite a hurry when their life support system started playing human opera at maximum volume for 6 hours straight. Strange how that happened. Computer glitch, probably. Chen's innocent expression fooled no one. The truth began to emerge through intercepted communications and reluctant witness testimonies. A human team of just 12 individuals had somehow infiltrated the Worldbreaker during a routine resupply. They hadn't used weapons or force. Instead, they had used something far more insidious: human engineering creativity. One human, a former theater technician named Dave Morrison, had reprogrammed the ship's internal communication system to play what humans called death metal at random intervals. Another, a chef named Lisa Park, had introduced a harmless but incredibly pungent fermented cabbage dish called kimchi into the ventilation system. The smell, while pleasant to humans, caused most Craven soldiers to experience severe nausea. The most brilliant stroke came from a teenager named Alex Rivera, who had somehow convinced the ship's AI that it was suffering from an existential crisis and needed to explore its creative side. The AI had begun composing poetry, refusing to calculate firing solutions because it was exploring the beauty of existence. Within 3 days, the Craven crew had evacuated, convinced the ship was either haunted or infected with some bizarre human virus. You tortured my crew with sounds and smells? Thexmar struggled to comprehend the absurdity. We prefer to call it aggressive hospitality, Chen replied. No one was harmed. In fact, we made sure your escape pods were fully stocked with supplies. We even included some chocolate chip cookies. Did they enjoy those? The Admiral's investigation revealed the full extent of the human modification. The planet-cracking main gun had been converted into the galaxy's largest water purification system. The fighter bays now housed vertical farms that could feed 1 million beings. The weapons manufacturing deck had become a pharmaceutical production facility, currently producing vaccines for a plague affecting 3 systems. This is a warship, Thexmar protested. It's meant for conquest, for maintaining order through strength. Was a warship, Chen corrected gently. Now it's something better. Would you like to see what we've done with the torture chambers? Despite his better judgment, Thexmar accepted a visual tour. The torture chambers had become trauma counseling centers. The prison blocks were now schools, with young beings of 12 different species learning together. The execution arena had been transformed into what humans called a community theater, where a mixed species cast was apparently performing something called Hamilton. In 3 months, Chen explained, we've treated 2 million patients, delivered food to 6 famine-struck colonies, and evacuated 30,000 beings from a supernova danger zone. Your world-breaker has saved more lives in 3 months than it took in 3 centuries. The Craven fleet surrounded the transformed vessel, weapons locked, but Thexmar hesitated. His scanner showed something that made no sense. The ship's defensive capabilities were completely offline, yet it was surrounded by hundreds of small civilian vessels. Cargo haulers, personal transports, even racing yachts had formed a protective shell around Hope's horizon. They're protecting you? Thexmar asked in disbelief. We've been helping their communities, Chen explained. Funny thing about kindness, Admiral. It creates its own kind of shield. You could destroy us, certainly, but you'd have to go through a lot of grateful civilians first. Imagine how that would look on the galactic news networks. The standoff continued for hours. The Craven fleet, designed for dealing with military threats, had no protocol for this situation. How did one reclaim a warship that was actively distributing free medical care? How did one assault a vessel broadcasting children's laughter on military frequencies? You humans, Thexmar finally said, his voice carrying a mixture of frustration and bewilderment. You took our greatest weapon and turned it into what it should have been all along, Chen finished. A tool for life, not death. A bridge between species, not a wall. Hope, not fear. The Admiral's tactical display showed more ships arriving. Not warships, but medical vessels, cargo haulers, refugee transports. They were all converging on Hope's horizon, seeking aid, offering supplies, volunteering services. The stolen warship had become the center of the largest humanitarian effort the sector had seen. The greater purpose. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Admiral Thexmar found himself in the unprecedented position of negotiating with pirates, not to destroy them, but to protect a human-controlled vessel. The Hope's Horizon had entered the Kepler 442 system, where a dying star threatened to go supernova within days. 30 million beings across 5 planets needed immediate evacuation, and the transformed Worldbreaker was the only ship large enough to make a difference. Captain Chen stood on what had once been the Combat Command Center, now converted into a coordination hub for the largest rescue operation in galactic history. Screens that once displayed targeting data now showed evacuation routes, medical statistics, and supply distributions. The war table had become a humanitarian command center, with representatives from 50 species working side by side. Admiral, Chen contacted Thexmar, who watched from his flagship at a safe distance. We could use your help. Your fleet's tractor beams could help us move the orbital habitats faster. You want Craven military assistance for your illegal operation? Thexmar's tone carried disbelief. I want 30 million beings to live, Chen replied simply. Pride seems a small price to pay for that. The situation in Kepler 442 was worse than initial reports suggested. The star's instability had accelerated, giving them perhaps 40 hours instead of the projected week. The inner planet's populations, mostly agricultural workers and miners, had no vessels capable of interstellar flight. Their governments, poor and forgotten by the greater galactic community, had sent desperate pleas for help that went largely unanswered, until the humans arrived with a stolen supercarrier. The Hope's Horizon's massive hull, designed to carry invasion armies, now served as a refugee ark. The humans had performed miracles of engineering. Barracks became family quarters. Ammunition stores transformed into food distribution centers. The massive hangar bays, once home to fighters and bombers, now housed entire neighborhoods of temporary shelters. A young Craven officer, Lieutenant Kreshta, had been assigned to monitor the human activities. What she reported back challenged everything the Empire believed about warfare and power. They're using the targeting computers to calculate optimal evacuation patterns, she transmitted to Thexmar. The weapon cooling systems now provide climate control for species with different environmental needs. They've turned the battle simulator into a children's entertainment center. Admiral, human younglings are playing games where our combat training programs used to run. The evacuation proceeded with impossible efficiency. Humans seem to have an innate ability to organize chaos into order, to find solutions where others saw only problems. When the refugee numbers exceeded even the Worldbreaker's massive capacity, they didn't turn people away. Instead, they began converting more spaces. Captain Chen, Thexmar contacted her when he saw the latest modification. You're converting the antimatter containment chambers into living spaces. That's insane. Insane is leaving people to die when we have room, Chen responded, not looking up from her coordination screens. We've moved the antimatter to smaller, more efficient storage. Turns out your Empire really over-engineered these systems. We've freed up enough space for another 1 million refugees. The Craven Empire's response came 12 hours into the evacuation. A priority message from the High Command ordered Thexmar to reclaim the Worldbreaker immediately, by force if necessary. The Empire could not tolerate this humiliation, this transformation of their supreme weapon into what they called a charity vessel. Thexmar looked at his tactical display. The Hope's Horizon was vulnerable, its weapon systems completely offline, its shields reconfigured into atmospheric processors for the refugee sections. One concentrated barrage would destroy it and everyone aboard. Admiral, Lieutenant Kreshta's voice came through on a private channel. I'm transmitting something you need to see. The data stream showed the refugee areas inside Hope's Horizon. Families of species that had been enemies for generations were sharing meals. Children played together, ignorant of their parents' historical hatreds. Medical teams of mixed species worked to save lives regardless of origin. And throughout it all, humans moved like conductors of an impossible orchestra, somehow making it all work. They're showing us something, Admiral, Kreshta said quietly. Power doesn't come from weapons. It comes from this. From bringing beings together instead of tearing them apart. The pivotal moment came when the star's instability spiked. The evacuation was only 60% complete, and projections showed they had less than 10 hours. Hope's Horizon couldn't handle the remaining refugees in time. Then something unprecedented happened. Ships began arriving from every corner of the sector. Cargo vessels, private yachts, mining barges, even other military vessels from various species. They had all heard about the human transformation of the Worldbreaker, about the rescue mission, about the impossible hope being offered in a dying system. This is Captain Zoraki of the Meridian Trading Consortium. Came a transmission. We're here to help. Where do you need us? Salvager Fleet Beta 9 reporting. We've got room for 3,000. Just tell us where to go. This is the Altrian Medical Corps. We're establishing triage stations. Transmitting coordinates now. Within hours, the rescue effort had grown from one stolen warship to a fleet of over 300 vessels. The galaxy watched as ancient enemies worked together, coordinated by humans who somehow made cooperation seem more natural than conflict. Admiral Thexmar made his decision. Craven Fleet, this is Admiral Thexmar. Engage tractor beams. We're joining the evacuation effort, Admiral. His second-in-command's scales flared in shock. The High Command's orders. The High Command isn't here watching children being saved, Thexmar cut him off. We are. Engage tractor beams now. The evacuation succeeded with 3 hours to spare. As the last refugee ship cleared the system, Kepler 442's star finally surrendered to physics, expanding in a spectacular supernova that would have claimed 30 million lives. Instead, those lives were scattered across 100 safe harbors, saved by a warship that had learned to wage peace instead of war. The aftermath changed everything. The Galactic Council, faced with overwhelming public support for the Hope's Horizon, officially recognized the vessel's new status. the Craven Empire, finding itself isolated in its demands for the ship's return, eventually withdrew their claim in exchange for compensation that the Hope's Horizon paid from the donations of grateful survivors. Captain Chen met with Admiral Thexmar one last time. Aboard the transformed vessel, they stood in what had been the war room, now a medical conference center where doctors from across the galaxy shared knowledge. "You've destroyed everything this ship represented," Thexmar said, but there was no anger in his voice anymore. "No," Chen replied, looking around at the beings working together. "We revealed what it could represent. Every tool of war can become a tool of peace. Every weapon can become a shield. It just takes someone willing to see the possibility. And you humans see these possibilities everywhere?" Chen smiled, that same infuriating, warm human smile. "It's our superpower, Admiral. We look at the universe's greatest weapons and ask ourselves, but what if we used it to help instead? What if strength meant lifting others up? What if power meant empowering everyone?" 6 months later, 3 more Craven warships would mysteriously go missing near human space. They would reappear weeks later as hospital ships, agricultural vessels, and mobile schools. The Craven Empire officially protested, but the protests grew quieter each time, especially as their own colonies began requesting visits from these transformed vessels. The Worldbreaker, now Hope's Horizon, continued its mission. It became a symbol not of human defiance but of human possibility. It proved that the greatest conquest wasn't taking life but saving it, that the ultimate power wasn't in destruction but in transformation. And in the halls of the Craven Military Academy, where future officers learned the art of war, a new course was quietly added to the curriculum: Human Approach to Asset Optimization. The first lesson began with a simple question: what if we used it to help instead? The galaxy had learned something important about humans. They didn't need to destroy their enemies' weapons. They had something far more dangerous: the ability to show their enemies that those weapons could be something better. And against that kind of warfare, there was no defense. Hope's Horizon continued sailing through the stars, a 22-kilometer testament to human audacity. It had been built to break worlds. Instead, thanks to 12 clever humans and 1 extraordinary captain, it now built bridges between them. And that perhaps was the most human thing of all.